Now I will try to speak from here and to do it loud enough, but if you can't hear, these are the best seats today. Dear sisters and brothers in Christ, sometimes you wake up in the morning and you are deeply irritated. This might be because you had a bad dream during the night, but it can also be because of a hard new reality that is there now. During this week, many of us have been perplexed and irritated. Deep worries, but also cynical remarks can be heard in corridors. But actually, it is not the first irritation in this year. What happened this week made me think of other events during the year. Brexit, for example, was also a serious irritation for me. How do people understand what it means to be community? How do people understand what it means to live together in society? Why do people opt for isolation? There is somewhat a dangerous mix of hate and fear against others. You yourself might think of other places where you feel a deep worry or concern. So when we look around across different regions on this planet, the political climate makes us shiver. The beautiful stones that build democratic governance, free elections, referenda, seem to shake. And the democratic house which we want to inhabit is no longer a hospitable home. What is worrying about these political shifts is that they came about through democratic procedures. So it's not just one person conquering a nation, leading the nation astray. But it is a political and societal climate that is what we call an enabling environment for hardline, protectionist policies that demonize others. So the political ethos among us citizens is deeply disturbed. There is much hate and fear. And we long for the Son of Righteousness to rise, that injustice may be exposed and overcome. We long for the wings of healing that transform the divisive, hardline atmosphere. Now, how do we as Christians deal with that political climate? We clearly know that we shall not be guided by hate and fear. But we also have to admit that we are not completely immune. So what we need to do is to understand more deeply what this is about, what hate and fear is about. What is important for me is to recognize that hate and fear are not just spontaneous, sudden emotions, but they are a way of perceiving reality. So hate and fear are a political discourse. They are a communicative strategy to interpret the world. And so we have to dismantle the myth that they are natural, instinctive reactions to a real threat. The political climate of hate and fear is not natural. It is fabricated. At Jesus' time, the political climate was also in turmoil, and then apocalyptic narratives were widespread. The Roman Empire was suffocating society, and communities were deeply perplexed because they did not see a clear way forward for future generations. So political oppression has often been a reason for apocalyptic messaging to spread. Luke's Luke's gospel connects with the apocalyptic religious tradition that had been around for quite some time then. But it rejects the usual speculation about the time and the signs of when the end of times will come about. What seems to be very characteristic of apocalyptic literature is the blending of real disasters and virtual end-of-time imaginary. At the time when Luke's Gospel was written, there was an apocalyptic imaginary fueled by grim narratives of preachers and prophets of all kinds, but also fueled by experiences of real oppression and destruction by the Roman Empire. The temple in Jerusalem had been brutally destroyed in the year 70. Jesus has two straightforward advices. Beware that you are not led astray, and do not be terrified. This can be seen as a twofold strategy to overcome hate and fear. First, do not be led astray means not to lose one's mind, and to hold on to the idea that reason is an important human faculty. We have to claim that at least to a certain degree we can distinguish between facts and fiction. And reason really is an asset to help us navigate in a complicated world and help us to meaningfully communicate with others. Do not be terrified is the second advice. Even when facing political turmoil and natural disasters, do not lose your connection and relationship with Christ. It is not the events that determine your life. Your life is grounded and nurtured by God's presence. Now, Luke's text moves from the overall apocalyptic narrative to the specific experience of the Christian community at the time. They faced persecution because of their faith. Jesus promises to provide Christians with what they need. Jesus says, I will give you words and wisdom that none of your opponents will be able to withstand or contradict. God promises to intervene, not with an earthquake, but with words and wisdom. God's presence enables humans to speak in meaningful ways and to act wisely. Now for me, this is the core message of this passage in Luke. In the midst of all the grand apocalyptic narratives, God does not leave God's children alone. God provides what is most needed. God provides words and wisdom, spoken by human beings to other human beings, and it makes sense to them. So in the face of hate and fear, God grants words and wisdom to human beings to stop the irrationality. I see this promise of words and wisdom as a helpful stepping stone when the Christian call to love one's enemy seems beyond reach at the moment. Then simple, clear words and wisdom become a blessing. When the world is deeply irritated, what it needs most are words and wisdom that provide meaning in the midst of perplexity. Now, I want to share a concrete example from a country which is very dear to my heart, Indonesia. There is also currently some political turmoil in Jakarta. The governance of the capital city of this majority Muslim nation is a Christian of Chinese descent. And in view of the upcoming election for the governor's office in February, there are attempts by his opponents and also by fundamentalist groups to discredit him. So he has been accused of blasphemy for the way he referred to the verse in the Quran that deals with the question whether Muslims should be ruled by a non-Muslim political leader. there has been a huge demonstration against him, a lot of political agitation, Facebook comments all over the place. Now, as this was going on in recent days and weeks, I received an email, and this email went to a network of a number of civil society activists in Indonesia, and there was an attachment to it, 2 pages, written by a respected Muslim leader, Shafi Ma'arif. And his text provides words and wisdom. He explains what had actually happened, and he demystifies the politicization of religion that had taken place. And then this 2-page text created a meaningful echo through email exchange with the network. And it empowered these activists not to be led astray. So Shafi Ma'arif's text was longer than a Facebook posting. It was 2 pages. There was no like button, but there was a respond button in the email, and people responded to it. So there was a meaningful exchange. This for me is a very modest but real example of intervening into the irrationality of our time with words and wisdom. The people who were involved in the email exchange know that democracy is more than elections. Democracy is a political ethos and a culture that starts long before the elections and that needs to be cultivated through words and wisdom. Beware that you are not led astray. Do not be terrified. Luke's text about the end of times disenchants apocalyptic speculation. Don't engage in the grand narrative, but trust God's promise in plain words and down-to-earth wisdom. Words and wisdom connect with our souls, and they nurture and sustain our souls. The prophet Malachi says, "For you who revere my name, the Son of Righteousness shall rise, and with healing in its wings." Now this is really a beautiful metaphor. We've been using it during the liturgy, and it will go on during worship service. The dark irritations that came during the night will be cleared away. The rising of the sun is a strong symbol for a new beginning. It immediately speaks to us. Now, historically, the sun is an age-old image for justice. The symbol of the sun having wings originates specifically from ancient Egypt. So the sun symbolizes divine power that guarantees just relationships and preserves the cosmic order. It is very interesting to see how the pre-Israelite tradition was taken up in Jerusalem, was accommodated and found its place in the monotheistic understanding of God. In times of political turmoil, the liberative Exodus tradition and the universal justice tradition mutually interpret and deepen one another. Now, one of the church fathers, Hippolyte of Rome, used this metaphor of the Son of Righteousness with its wings in another way and adapts it further. He calls Jesus Christ the Son that brings righteousness and healing. Hippolyte interprets Jesus' arms on the cross as being these outstretched wings. He says that Jesus calls all who revere him to come close, and he will protect and care for them. Sisters and brothers in Christ, the Bible texts at the end of the liturgical year talk about the end of times, and they name the severe irritations that people encounter. But they also name the promise: righteousness and healing, meaningful words and wisdom. May there be a new morning where we see the Son of Righteousness rise with healing in its wings. Amen.